To see hear from you guys over there. So welcome to CEO Time Warp Bonus Day. Hey guys, not only have some of you been here all 3 days of our actual workshop, but the fact that you're here today, whether this is your first time all week or whether this is your fourth time a week, it tells me that you know you need this, right? But here's going to be my challenge to you today. What are you doing with this? Okay, because you might be like, okay, Lissa, this was great. But then you let the notes and replays get buried and it's back to busyness as usual. Or you might be like, okay, Lissa, this is great. And you start going off on your own. You start trying to build the schedules, the systems, the strategies we've been talking about. But, right, life happens, like we just heard about. And you start getting distracted, by all the things or the rings, dings, and pings, right? And get lost somewhere along the way. Or maybe you're like, that was great. I've already got this. And here's what's so interesting. I've had conversations with several people this week. So I'm not calling out any one person. I always put my CEO hat on, like I shared with you yesterday, and I really get curious about things. I've talked to several people this week who already have read the books. They've already watched the trainings. They've already attended the workshops, whether it was this or something else. They've even invested in programs that are supposed to help you get schedules for your time, systems for your business, and strategies for your growth in place. But still, they feel stressed, overcapacity, and like there's not enough fruit for all the time and work. Can you relate? Right? How many of us have done that? And so this morning, just even as I was prayerfully thinking about today, I got really curious with the Lord about that. I'm like, why is this? And I think that often there are three gaps, three main gaps. So listen and kind of be like, which gap do I need to fill? And it may be all three. And if it is, that's okay. The win is that you're noticing the gap and not just letting, like the leaky bucket, like we talked about the other day, just keep leaking all your time out. Okay, so the first gap is the information gap, right? Now, guaranteed, like we just don't need more information, right? But here's the thing, it's the right information. Because there's a difference between all the time management stuff out there that you can Google that focuses on keeping time from getting away, and that's not a bad thing. And there's a difference between that and the time scaling stuff we've been talking about this week that is focusing on the exponential expansion, right? The increasing of your ROTI, return on time invested, right? You can't Google time scaling. Nobody's talking about this. You can't Google ROTI. Nobody's talking about this, right? And this is what's helping us not just settle with, I'm good with time, but like I'm on this journey and I will always be working on time. I'm always on this journey. Okay. So are you experiencing an information gap and you need the right information? The second thing, are you experiencing an implementation gap? How many of you know things, including some of the stuff we've talked about today? Some of you, you're not brand new here. Some of you, this is the first time you're hearing this. That's either way, right? But you're not doing it fully, consistently at the level that we're talking about and ever increasing. These three things should be like as natural as breathing. This should become your new norm if you are a business owner who wants to scale, right? But I get it because implementation can be really hard on your own. And so maybe you really haven't had, that personal motivation to do it. And maybe you even haven't had that level of support to really help you implement. Because oftentimes we get into programs or whatever, right? And that person who's teaching is like way so far off, right? And they don't really even understand kind of the ins and outs of our life and business. Like I make it a point to know my clients personally, both their business and things about their life. I mean, I don't obviously know everything, right? And I'm always thinking about them and how I can help them even more, right? And even though clients get up to 12 months with me, like I get them implementing stuff in the first 3 weeks. Not like, okay, months into this thing, now I'm finally getting around to it. So, do you have an implementation gap and do you have the right support for that implementation? And then the third one is what I think really kind of starts creating this big gap, the inspiration gap. And here's what I mean. Now, notice they all start with I because my brain likes patterns. So I made it start with I. But the stuff we're talking about this week is not the way the world teaches you to approach time. Why? Because faith changes everything. But here's the thing we have to be really careful of as believers, especially for those of us who have walked with the Lord for a really long time. I was 3 years old when I told my mom I wanted to call Jesus on the telephone to ask him into my heart. Of course, I had no idea what that really meant. It wasn't until high school when I was going on a missions trip and preparing to lead kids through the wordless book that I really started going, do I really believe this? Or is this just what my parents always say? But so many believers are like, yeah, I got faith, Lissa. I got Jesus. Like, right? But is your faith, is your relationship with Christ really what motivates and drives how you use your time and the results that you're going after? Because the world is running around like there's never enough time and they're behind, right? They're chasing after these things that Jesus talks about in Matthew 6. But as believers, we're not supposed to be running around like people don't know him, right? We're supposed to do what? Seek him first and his way of doing things. And then when we partner together with him, right? Like, and it even says, don't worry about tomorrow. God already knows what you need, right? And so, what we are talking about this week is what I call the time stewardship multiplier. Yes, we kind of do have like a secret edge as believers if we lean into it, right? There are things that God does for his people that the world misses out on. Sorry, not sorry, right? Like, so if you hang out with me, we're not just going to talk about schedule system strategies. We're also going to talk about how stewardship and faith and eternity and all of those things go in here. So if you've, again, heard time stuff before, but you're still feeling behind, or you're still, like trying to find all the things, or you're still not seeing the growth, right? You have to go back and say, where is my gap? Would you say it's more in information? Would you say it's more in implementation, or it's more in inspiration? Or maybe all the above? I would challenge those of you who are on live, and if you're listening to a replay, like tell it, raise your hand and be like, yeah, this is what it is for me, right? And recognizing it is always the first step. Okay. And until we get all three of those, the right information, the right level of implementation, and this faith directed inspiration, we are not going to scale this business that God has put on our heart, right? Which is why we need these three things: the schedules, the systems, the strategies from this perspective to 10x our productivity and double our results and have time to FaceTime your college girl. True story. This morning, my daughter called from college. Mom, you have time to talk? Sure. Right now, it was so interesting because old Lissa in my head would have been like, oh my gosh, I only have, so much time until this thing. I still got to finish this. I got to do this, like it would have been swirling. But because I've got these three legs in place, I was like, yeah, and I could be fully present. I wasn't multitasking in my head, right? I wasn't like on my computer doing things because I still had stuff to get done. I was like, yeah, we're wedding planning. I live in Illinois. She lives in Virginia. The wedding's in Oklahoma. So I want to make time for her and not feel like my business is going to fall apart if I don't. And so that was just like a really cool thing. And wouldn't even be funnier. My husband literally called at like 4 minutes before we went live. Instead of just sending him to voicemail, I was like, you know what? I'm going to answer this because I'm good. I'm just sitting here ready, right? Like, and it was just God again, I think, going, okay, Lissa, like, are you really living this out? Like, yeah. And again, like Debbie was sharing, it's my response. Because in the past, I would have gotten that call and I would have been flustered, or I would have been thrown off, or I would have been rushed or whatever. And, I sat with him until it was like a minute before the top of the hour. And then I was like, okay, gotta go. I'll talk to you in a little bit. So that's the kind of business owner that I want you to walk away being, because you got these things in place, right? And because it's all coming from what's going on inside of here. So let's do a quick recap before we go on, just to kind of go, where have we been this week? Okay. Day one, we talked about how to work less with time scaling schedules. Here's the test. If you have time blocks and or a digital or paper planner, but you still feel behind, or like time gets away, or you like it pulled off task easily, or you don't know how you're going to get it all done, you don't really have a schedule, at least not one that's going to help you scale your business. On day two, we talked about activating your team or your output with those time scaling strategies. Point that direction. So here's the test. If you have to-do lists or even workflows, but you're still jumping from one thing to the next, or spending times looking for things when you sit down to work, or you're dropping balls on things like follow-up, or you have a team that's constantly needing you, you don't really have a system that's going to help you scale your business. And then on day three, we talked about reaching goals faster with the time scaling strategies. And here's your test. If you set goals, but you don't hit them, or you start those really important projects, but you keep pushing them off because you don't have time, or you find it's like, you guys, September is next week. Are you closer to what you wanted to see happen than you were back in January? If not, you don't really have strategies that are helping you scale your business. But good news is, this is exactly what we're doing. And this doesn't have to end today. And we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But I want to hear from you guys first. And I would love if one or two people, whether you shared this week or not, it doesn't matter, Want to share a really quick aha or a win or something that that has come out of what we have done here this week. I would love to hear some roadie. Like this doesn't have to take, months and years for us to start seeing the fruit. Like we can start seeing the roadie, the return on time invested here this week. So, does anyone have anything that you want to share with us about what's kind of come out from this week? I love it. Debbie was nudged to call and encourage someone 20 minutes before this, right? When you're a business owner and you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, you don't got time for that kind of stuff. Love it, Debbie. Always be looking for the roadie. And here's the thing. Number one, there's always some roadie, right? Either our roadie is in the direction we want to grow or our roadie is in the direction we don't want to go. So there's always roadie, right? So be looking for it. And if you don't see the roadie you really want, then you have to go back to those three gaps, right? Do I have the right information? Do I have the right implementation? And do I have the right inspiration? Right? So I love that. I dug into my business plan with ChatGPT. Okay, something you've been putting off. Now you're making time for. I love it, right? And there is a tool, right? There's so many great tools. I think the Holy Spirit is our best tool, but ChatGPT is a great way to get things started, right? So I'm going to encourage you guys, don't let this stuff just kind of get shuffled away when we're done, okay? Because this is what's going to bear the fruit. All right. So this morning, wouldn't you know, like God just always shows up in my time with him. And I'm always like, how do you know what I need to hear? And the verse of the day in the Bible app was Proverbs 16:3, which says, commit to the Lord the work that you do, and he will establish your plans. Like, wow. And then there was this prayer. So I want to pray this prayer over us. And really, yeah, I want this to be the prayer of all of our hearts. This is my prayer for myself and my business. This is my prayer this morning for each of you who are going to be listening to this bonus session or any of the sessions this week. This is my prayer for anyone, who really has been called to this business and wants to be faithful and fruitful with their time. Okay? So, here it is. Look, God, I want my life to be lived for your glory. In moments where it's difficult for me to surrender my plans to you, please help me to focus on your vision for the future. I want all of my work and anything I do to point others to you. In Jesus' name, amen. So let that be our prayer today and every day. Okay? Now, before we dive in today, do you remember how I told you to show up this week, especially today? You remember? To show up like a CEO who is already seeing this roadie, right? Who's already working the hours you want to work, not more, right? And not way less, right? With more space in her day and in her head. Like the CEO who's already earning those dollars that you would love for that to be producing with less stress about her cash flow and more margin to be generous. Hello? Like, how amazing would it feel? Like, when you sense a need, you don't have to like double check your bank account. Like the CEO who has new client notifications in her inbox and how do I work with you messages in her DMs on the daily. Like the CEO who never feels behind or lacking or not enough because she is an abundant CEO, like we talked about yesterday, in every way, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially. Who wants to be that kind of abundant CEO? Drop CEO in the chat. That is how we want to start showing up. And as such, that's how we should start looking at our time. Okay. And so here's what, a little bit of tough love. If you guys are here for some tough love, and I hope you always know this is coming from a place of I want to push you in the right direction, right? This week, I have given an invitation to a time scaling strategy session. And some of you have showed up here every single day, or you've listened to these replays wherever you're listening every single day, right? And you're like, after all of this, yes, I'm serious about growing my business, not just plain business owner. I see how time underlies all of this and how it's been an obstacle and how I can turn it into an asset. And I know I want this and I need this. And I believe Lissa can maybe help me, but you still haven't applied for one of those sessions. I just want to ask, like, why are you here? And I'm saying that like in a challenging way. Are you ready to really step out of business owner and into CEO? And I just want to say, if it's because of the investment, I've got something juicy that I am offering to CEO Time Warp ladies only. First, that I believe that anyone can make work no matter how much you're currently making in your business or how much is sitting in your bank account. Okay. And what happens when we fix these three things and not just fix them, but scale them? This is what unlocks everything else. Remember, we talked about yesterday. You've spent all this time and money on all these other flashy things and they didn't change the world, right? It's because you need this. So if you're ready to really start seeing changes, drop ready in the chat. Okay, we'll be coming back to that here at the end. Now, this was also in that little devotional this morning. You ready for this? Our job is obedience. Our job is obedience, which includes how we use our time. His job is everything else. Can I get an amen to that? Our job is obedience, including how I use my time. His job is everything else. This is what motivates stewardship, is what motivates productivity and profitability, right? And I often talk about time being like seeds. And I'm sure you're familiar with the parable of the sower, or I like to call it the parable of the soils. There was some seed that fell on the path, and what happened to it? Snatched up by the birds. There was some that fell on rocky ground, but it didn't have enough to take root, right? There was some that fell in the weeds, but they got choked out by the worries. And then there was some that fell on good soil. And what did that one produce? 30, 60, 100-fold results. Did you know, I did the math, that is a 10,000% increase. Talk about scaling that one little seed, 10,000% increase. Who wants that in their business? That's some of the secret sauce that we get as believers, right? When we are leaning into this time stewardship factor and multiplier. Now, there's a very small verse that talks about 100-fold that I bet most of us have skipped over. Can anyone quote for me Genesis 26:12? Anybody know Genesis 26:12? It's okay. I didn't either, right? But as I was reading through scripture, like this verse literally leaped off the page. Here's what it says. And this is actually this morning's devotional. So if you got into the community, shameless plug for the community, right? Like I talked a little bit more about this, and I even have a screen, like an image you can save, but it says, and Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in that same year, in the same 12 months, 100-fold, because the Lord blessed him. Now, here's what's crazy. Okay, Isaac was the son of Abraham, who'd been given the promise that his people would be more than stars in the sky, right? But they weren't yet. And he was traveling during a famine, which meant the conditions were not very good for crops. And he happened to be traveling through a land that didn't belong to him. In fact, it belonged to the Philistines. Do you know who they are? Hello, they're future enemies. And so Isaac and his small little clan of people, like this isn't their home, they're nomads. So they would have been carrying whatever they had on their backs, right? So they wouldn't have had a ton of stuff, literally whatever they could carry in their back or put on whatever animals they had with us, right? But here's what's so cool about this verse. Right in the middle of what didn't look promising, what happened? The God who always keeps his promises said, stop right here, right now, put seed in this ground, and watch what I'm going to do. Right? Now, it didn't take several years of harvesting that same field and really cultivating it to get 100-fold. How long did it take? 1 year, right? 1 year. And again, remember, we're in a famine time. So number one, I would think that seed would be hard to come by. And number two, I would think that the ground and the weather is probably not very favorable. But God, right? And here's the thing. When Isaac knew what to do and when to do it, and knew that it was part of this bigger plan, right? He did it. He was faithful. He was a steward, not because it was his idea, but because it was God's idea. And here's the part that I love. That growth was so abundant, right? That 100-fold, even the Philistines around him, they were starting to envy him. It produced so much fruit that they noticed, and get this, a few verses later, they even commented, we can see the Lord has been with you. What? Like people who did not honor God in any way, shape, or form are giving God the glory because this guy was a faithful steward of what God had given to him. And he knew what he was supposed to do, when he was supposed to do it, and how it was growing him to this thing that God had called him to. It was just to give him glory, right? Like this is exactly what we've been talking about this week. As a business owner, we need to know what to do, when to do it, and how it's growing us towards the upward call of God in our life, right? So I want to ask you this. Do you believe that God gave you this business to tend in this season you're in, even if it feels like a drought, and he gave you this gift of time and says, will you trust me and invest it here now and watch me bring the growth? Let me just say, when we do it with God, not just for God, there's a difference, right? It is way better when we trust and obey and partner with him, right? And don't act like the owner. In fact, one of my clients shared this quote from Randy Elkhorn. He has a book called The Treasure Principle, and it says this: when stewards act like owners, they become embezzlers. Oh, how many of us have act like owners with our time or our business, right? Yeah, and we don't get very far, just like that servant with the one talent. I mean, this is what I was, right? Like for so long, I was like had this vice grip on my time. And I thought I had the right motivation. I thought it was because I was trying to be a good mom and I was trying to be a good wife and my husband was deployed and I had a business and I was running women's ministry at our church and like all these things, right? And so then I went and grabbed all the time management stuff I could, and I had color-coded schedules. They were packed lock tight, right? And I had lists of lists, right? I was getting stuff done. I was checking lots of boxes, and I had all these like ideas and like strategies that I was gonna like, I was working on, and I was like had a bunch of irons in the fire, right? I was working really hard, but it was all on me. And I wasn't trusting God with my time. And so guess what? My time was always maxed out, stressed out, burned out. Lissa was like, I may look like I had it all together when people saw me, but like, no, I didn't. But here was what was really sad is after all that work and time, I still wasn't seeing the roadie that I was praying for. And I was missing out on things that I said mattered, like really knowing the Lord, like really being with my family, like really even growing this business that I was working so hard to grow. Can you relate? Right? So here's where we enter. This is what's so different from just I got the schedule systems and strategies, Lissa. Okay, great. But here's where the time stewardship multiplier comes in, right? Because God's part is giving us the passion, the vision, the provision, the time, the talents, the treasure. Our part is trusting and obeying with what to do, when to do it, and how it connects to where He's taking us. So, what I want to do today is take you a few levels deeper. We've talked about just kind of like real high level about these things. I'm going to take you a little bit deeper into these three parts of the triangle. So, in the last page of your workbook, if you have this with you, you should see that triangle that I showed you at the beginning. That's what we're going to be looking at today. And as we go, you'll notice the question at the bottom is, where are my gaps or my opportunities to scale? Where are my gaps or I don't want you to go through this and be like, check, check, check. Because guess what? The things I'm going to show you, I'm always going back and refining and up leveling as I grow and as my business grows and as my faith grows. So this is not a check the box thing. This is a what do I need in this area? And this is just us going to be like skirting again, just kind of like just a couple layers. Like there's so much more, right, that I get into when we actually have like, a whole bunch of time together. Okay. But I want you coming in thinking like that abundant CEO. Okay. So let me share my screen. I love what's going on in the chat. You can see little things popping over here. So that's so fun to see. Share. It's at the top. Okay. Yeah, okay. Make sure all of our people heads are out of the way and all of that. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Can somebody give me a thumbs up or say, yes, I do, or whatever, just so I know that I know?
Yes.
Thank you, Christy. It's always good to know that it's working, right? Okay. So, um, we are looking at what is it that is going to help us make time our most valuable business asset, right? Such that our time is productive. We're not just here to waste it. We are here to do productive things with it, but not just for productivity's sake, such that it's profitable, right? We don't just want to be checking boxes for productivity's sake, but not have it producing any fruit, right? We're talking about like actual fruit, like real like tangible fruit and intangible fruit. This is where like the faith piece comes in and starts multiplying that, right? And this presence to the Lord, to the people that matter most, to the people we're called to serve, to the missions and ministries and things like that that God has put on our heart. This is what I was missing out on when I was chasing after all of these things. Okay, so I gotta click onto that screen so I can move it here. Okay, so real quick, there are three main things that so many women that I talk with are struggling with. Number one, we have a lot of demands on our time. Can anyone relate? A lot of people and things are wanting your time, including everything coming in on your rings, dings, and pings. Okay? You could be doing a bazillion things at the same time and still not get to it all. Do you agree? Right? The second thing is you have this ever-growing to-do list, right? Yes, you may have all these demands, and a lot of them are important and urgent. And as I love how Debbie describes it, has consequences, right? And so they go on our to-do list. And that to-do list is literally driving our day and, and all the things that we do. And we're just always chasing, trying to get to the bottom of it, but we don't because we keep adding things to the end of it. And then we've got tyranny the urgent, right? We're starting off on a trail that we think is gonna, okay, this is I finally have time to work on this thing in my business, or I finally have time to whatever, fill in the blank, right, of what that bigger thing is that God's put on your heart. And then again, the rings, dings, and pings, or the demands, or the to-do list start pulling us away, right? And we're back in the weeds, just feeling like our head is above water. Can you relate to any of those three challenges? I think these are universal. I don't think they're just a woman thing. I think they're an everyone thing, but I think we especially, and then especially as business owners, tend to like see and feel a lot of this, right? And no wonder we're stressed out, worn out, burned out because we're trying to carry it all, which is why Jesus invites us to a whole different way, right? In Matthew 11, like, come to me, let me show you a whole different way of doing life. He said, I will give you rest. And that did not mean a mattress and a beach vacation, even though that would be the rest that most of us would probably ask for. Can you just send me on vacation for a week? He's like, I know that's not going to fix the problem. What you need is a whole different way of doing life and business and work and ministry and all of that, right? So let me show you how to live in the midst of a busy and distracting world, right? And let me show you what to do with the time that I lay in front of you each and every day. So here's where we talk about the R.O.T.I method, because so many people, myself included back in the day, are just out there checking boxes, not really paying attention to the fruit it's producing or not producing, right? I, just was having a conversation with somebody earlier this week who was talking about getting all these things in order and how she was using this program that was helping her get all this stuff in order. And like, that's amazing. But like, my question is it producing fruit? Right? I'm not just here to make things look pretty and organized and color coded and whatever. Like, I actually want to see that it's producing something. So as CEOs, Christ empowered operators of our life and business, we have to be measuring the R.O.T.I, and then we have to be using that to make strategic decisions, right? And that was, for example, remember yesterday I shared the story about the email and how many people had registered for this email, this list building bundle from my list, and how many people from my list registered for this. And I could have just looked at the numbers and I could have felt less than or whatever, but I didn't. I like got down. What do those numbers mean? What's that telling me? How am I responsive to that? What am I changing or doing in response to that? How does that change where my time goes invested? How does it change? So that's what CEOs do, right? And this is what time management is missing. Time management is just helping you like get your time look pretty and feel like you got it under control. It's not focusing on the growth piece of it, right? That's where I think like it only gets us so far and it's better than nothing. I will say that, right? It got me to a certain level, but again, I wasn't able to really grow beyond that. I wasn't seeing the R.O.T.I and I was still stressed out. If you are using time management stuff, if you are in a program, if you have read the book, if you have been to the training and you still feel stressed out, worn out, burned out, maxed out, whatever, like, okay, then recognize that and let's do something about it. Okay, so here are the solutions to each of these problems. We'll go into each side of the triangle a little bit. Okay, so the solution to all those demands on your time are our CEO schedules. Okay, we've been talking about this week. And the first element of that is what I call capacity by design. Now, I'm not going to do this whole thing for you, but you couldn't hear in the background, but I had like some really loud kids at my house yesterday while I was training. It's okay, the microphone and Zoom cuts it out, but they always come in my office and steal my Skittles. And so yesterday I was like, let me show you guys why I have Skittles in my office because it's not for me to snack on. And so I'm not going to do the whole thing for you, but this is the Skittles and oranges illustration that you may have seen me. Wait, where's the camera? This way. Here we go. You may have seen me do before, right? And so I demonstrated this for them. I'm like, okay, I took everything out. I'm like, okay, this jar is your 24 hours. And you get up in the morning and you start playing and you start, wandering around the backyard and you start right? All the Skittles, right? Fills about halfway. And then mom's like, hey, you got to get your schoolwork done. And hey, we got to clean the house. And hey, we got to, so the oranges, like the important things. And what happens is there's not room. The oranges are literally falling out the top. And then I poured everything back out into my containers and I asked them, did I change the size of this container? No. I go, did I change the number of oranges? No. Did I change the amount of Skittles? No. I'm like, you watched it all. So you know I'm not like cheating you, right? And I put the oranges in first and we talked through like what some of those things were for them. And then we poured the Skittles in and look it fits exactly and it's not over capacity. And the one boy was like, how did you get a jar that perfectly fit like that? I'm like, did you notice it didn't fit when all the Skittles went in first? And I was like, and they're like, this is what you do? I'm like, yeah, this is what I do. Like, I help women, myself included, because I needed this, figure out how do I make the things fit into my 24 hours that matter, right? So we've got to identify our oranges and our Skittles and not just say it. Because if you say, Lissa, I know my priorities, but your time is still overflowing, or you're not getting to those things, or you don't, like you do not have those schedules that we're talking about. Okay, the second part we talked a little bit about this week is the time anchor method. Again, here's where I think that time blocking gets it wrong. It puts everything in these neat little boxes that we all know are not real life, right? They're focused, they're too tight, they're to-do list focused. They're like scrunched together and like one thing bumps into the next, and then you've got this big pile up, and then we already talked about it. It wastes 1 to 3 hours a day just creating them. Who has time for that? Right? Time anchors give the spacious zones of your day so that you know what it's time for, right? And inside of there, we can build rhythms and routines and things like that. But it's not this like, I have these time blocks that dictate what I do every hour of the day. I shared that story with you on the first day about that woman who was making her time blocks, but she's like, listen, honestly, I just kick the can down the road most of the day. So why was I even wasting my time? How many of you feel that way? You've got your time blocks, right? You've got your stuff in your planner, even if you have the Redeem Her Time Planner, right? Shout out to the Redeem Her Time Planner girls here. But you're still kicking the can down the road all day. You don't know what it's time for. You do not have a time scaling schedule. Okay, so pay attention there. And again, this is all in love because I want you to see where are my gaps? Where are the opportunities where I can level this thing up? Okay, the last one then is your ideal week. And here is where, like, I think so many of us think every week is different. Every week is different. And while, yes, there may be things that feel different every week, there are some things that are consistent or should be consistent, or you want or need them to be consistent. Even even something as simple as like, well, we'll talk about this in the next one. But I want you to be like paying attention to, okay, what are the things that actually I do need and want to have happen on a regular basis? And then here's the thing. Every week you should not be starting over with a blank calendar page and just writing in appointments and to-do lists. That is not a time scaling schedule because that's not actually helping you focus on the oranges, on these things that matter, and on what it's time for. So the ideal week is like the next step of how we put all this together. But it doesn't stop there because we literally keep layering from there. Like, how do I plan my month? How do I plan my quarter? How do I plan my year? And then how do I actually like make sure that this thing is working? And how do I like get to the end of the day and not ask the question, what did I get done all day? Or where did the time go? But like, I know exactly where my time went. And I feel really good about what filled it today. How amazing would that be to feel, right? That's what happens when you have scaling schedules. Okay. So, all right. On the next side of the triangle, hang on, I had to put somebody in. So then it took me over there. Okay. Oh, here, sorry. Green, yellow, red. So let's pause before we move on. Even if you're green, you still have gaps and opportunities. Okay. But I want you to evaluate where you think you are when it comes to schedules right now. The kind that we're talking about, not just I have a schedule, but like the kind that we're talking about where you don't feel behind all the time, where things don't get kicked down the road, where it's not overflowing, where you do know what it's time for and there's plenty of margin and space and all of that. And it's okay if you're a red. I encourage you, if you're on live, drop it in the chat because this is accountability for you to say, this is where I am. And now I'm recognizing it and I'm saying I don't want to stay here. And even you green people, right? Like again, how can we now scale this to the next level as you scale yourself and as you scale your business? All right. The next side is that growing to-do list. And we solve this with the CEO systems. Okay? Because not everything should be going on to-do list. We talked about that on day 2, right? And here's where we get really clear on a few different things. Number 1, what is yours to do? I call it the 4Ds decision matrix because not everything that you could do or should do, or that other people think you could or should do, is exactly what you should do, whether that's in your business or in your life. So everything we talk about, you guys, it doesn't just go like this is not just stuff for your business hours. This is like life stuff, right? Because if we're out of whack outside of our office, you better believe it's going to throw things out of whack in here and vice versa, right? So it all because, and we are whole beings, right? Like, I mean, as women, we've got all these open tabs in our head and probably on our computer, right? Which I'm going to show you in a second how not to, right? So we want to be making sure that we are aware of what is ours to do and what's not. And like I said earlier this week, and I keep saying, in your home, you should not be the only person pushing every button, doing everything, right? Same thing is true in your business if you want it to scale. Now, if you're completely happy with maxing out your time and and just being like, this is as far as I can go and grow, then great, keep pushing the button by yourself. But for those of you who are here and you're like, I know this thing has the ability to change people's lives. I know this, I've been called to share this with more people. I know that I've been called to make a bigger impact. You will eventually have to bring on someone or multiple someones to help you, right? And it doesn't have to cost, and it doesn't have to actually suck up more time than you think it's going to give you back, right? So we have to know what is ours to do and what is not. The next one is what I call those scalable SOPs, right? Here's where we workshop this on Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, day two. We started on Tuesday. Where it's not just a workflow. It's not, first of all, it's not a to-do list. That's already ixnaying that. We've already looked at and we talked about you need to know what's reoccurring versus one and done. Okay, one and done's get her done. Reoccurring, okay, now this is now going to get a scalable SOP around, right? And it starts with you, right? Don't hold it all in your head. Don't hold it all in your planner or your phone or your pieces of paper or notebooks or things like that. Like start getting it down in one simple place with everything you need, with the R.O.T.I attached to it, like we talked about that day and we worked on it, right? With all the resources right there in one click, right? So that way it is a well-oiled machine. So if you are the only person right now, your time is much more effective and efficient, and it will make it easier for you to hand this off to somebody else, which leads me to the last one. It's that CEO dashboard, right? Like so many people are like, I have this program for this, and I have this for this, and I have this for this, and I have this for this. I'm like, wow, I used to too. And I remember it felt like a spaghetti bowl in my head, and you're always jumping back and forth from, and that doesn't mean you can't use other programs, but you need one dashboard that drives what you do. When you sit down, there should be no question about what exactly am I doing today and where do I find it. And what I do is if I have to do the work actually on some other platform, then I have that link right there on my dashboard. Hello, I don't have to go like do all this, find the sign in, find the login, da 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 da, whatever, find the Google Doc, find the email, like it all goes on that card, right? And some of you, not many of you, I'm surprised, but inside the community, I did a video tour of not only the back end of my dashboard, but also what that Hello to Let's Go scalable SOP looks like. So yeah, like go over there and see like, oh wow, that's like way different than what I've been using. Even somebody in the community this morning, Christy, I think it was like, I've been using spreadsheets for so long and it's really hard to track things with spreadsheets. Yes, and amen, it is. And so and then you don't have to use the exact system that I use, but you need to create something that looks like that and functions like that. Okay, that's just the easiest one and simplest one that I have found. So that CEO dashboard is going to be key. Do you have everything in one place? Okay. So here's your stoplight. Green. Yep. And yellow. Some red. I'm a train wreck. It's okay. I love reds. I love yellows and I love greens, right? I'm always going back and refining my systems, right? So it's not, again, this is not like I've now reached the pinnacle of, because as you grow, these things are going to need to be updated and elevated. We talked about that when, like what's your plan to evaluate and update this because it's going to need to change. Okay? So, where are you when it comes to systems? Be honest with yourself, okay? All right, tyranny the urgent. Our solution to that is the strategies, right? Remember, 80% of our growth comes from the 20%, but most people don't ever get around to the 20%. So how do you get around to the 20%? You have a strategy there, okay? And it starts with having a CEO vision. And I use something called a CEO vision builder, right? Because so many of us are like just in the weeds of day to day. We have no idea where we're going. Or that vision is so crusty and old and we can barely see it anymore. We're not connected to it in any way, shape, or form. We've got to make sure that we have that in front of us on a consistent basis. This should be something you're seeing. I have it right above my computer. It has coffee sprayed all over it. If you heard my story on Monday about what happened with my coffee last week, but it's okay. I can still see those things. I have it in audio so I can listen to it, when I'm making my coffee in the morning. Well, funny how coffee is attached to my vision right now, right? So every time I drink coffee, I'm thinking about my vision. Like, what is it that you're building? Number one, building your vision, and then how are you keeping it in front of you? This is like not just like how am I getting through today or tomorrow? This is like where am I going 3, 4, 5 years from now? Okay. So we need that step. Then we need the growth map. We talked yesterday about how goal setting is not a scaling schedule because how many of us are not where we need to be stepping into September based on the goals we set back in January. And how many of us have given up on goals because that's been what happened for forever. And we're like, why? Right? Because goal setting doesn't get you anywhere. It's the growth mapping, right? And yesterday, remember how we talked through like, okay, where am I going and how do I start breaking this down? Right? And I call these the get her done focus cycles, those 12-week cycles. Like instead of like making it this huge thing, even if it is a big thing, like my planner example I shared with you yesterday, I broke it down into four 12-week get her done cycles. So that all I had to do was just look at the focus on this next piece. And but I even had that broken down, several layers down using this proprietary method that I've created. So that way I'm not overwhelmed, I'm paralyzed because it's too big. I'm not confused. I'm not distracted by, steps down the road. Like I'm like, okay, it's week 3 and this is where I am and this is what I'm focusing on. I have everything I need here for that. And I shared the example with you. In fact, I got an email from the gal. Remember the gal whose story I told you yesterday, who has the big name book launch project? Like she's got, she responded back to my email. She's like, I recognize that story because she came into me thinking she had a plan. Even this company, this big name publisher gave her a launch plan. But here's what she kept telling me. Lisa, I'm overwhelmed. Lisa, I don't have time. Lisa, this just came up. Lisa, da, da, da. So she had a plan, quote, but she didn't really have a plan, right? And so that's where I want you to see like this is so much deeper than that, right? So when it comes to your strategies, not just do you have them, okay? That's like one layer. Do I actually have my one thing, like identified, R.O.T.I attached to it and mapped out so that I know I'm going to hit this in the next 12 weeks or by the end of the year, like we worked on yesterday? But are you actually making measurable progress towards it? Can you see, right? That like, okay, I can see how far I've come, right? And I've got this plan that keeps me on track. And yes, sometimes I have to come in and adapt it, like I did with mine. So in order to do this, right? Like I had to pause it, but right, like we've got something that's helping us move forward, right? And we stay accountable to that on a weekly basis, because otherwise we are very distracted people. Hello, squirrels, right? Goldfish, what do they say? The goldfish has an attention span of like 12 seconds or 6 seconds. I think we're worse, right? So we need these tools that are connecting us and helping us grow in the right direction, right? So, where are you when it comes to your strategies? And then, as we talked about earlier today, now we're going to layer in the time stewardship multiplier. This is like my favorite part, the God secret sauce. And it's not like the God after the fact, right? Like we start with this, right? I have to see that my time is a gift from him, that the business I have is a gift from him, that the family I have is a gift from him, that, that all this stuff is a gift from him. I am just here as a steward. But guess what? When I steward it and partner with him, it has a multiplying effect. It's the 30, 60, 100-fold. Now, I'm not a farmer, but we live in a farming community. So I was curious one day. I'm like, I wonder what a typical yield is. Now, it does depend on the crop, but like a good yield was like 10 to 20%. Like a farmer would think that was a really great year. So when Jesus says, hey, you're going to put this seed in the ground, and they didn't have like Roundup and all that stuff, back then, but you're going to put the seed in the ground and it's producing 30, 60, 100-fold, the people would have been like, because back then they probably were getting like a 3% return. I mean, I don't know what they were getting, right? But here's the thing. No farmer puts one seed in the ground and expects one seed to come out, right? There already is multiplication built into just the sowing and reaping cycle of how God created the earth, right? But again, the world is missing out on the time stewardship multiplier because they're trying to do it on their own. They're running around like chickens with their heads cuts off. They're running around saying, I don't have time. And if I had time and when I have time and I don't have time for that. And oh, so much for this. And, like my business isn't growing. And maybe this, like flashy things that we're chasing. Like we should be seeing the fruit when we're partnering with him and we're taking this very like beautiful treasure he's given us and we're investing it wisely, right? So was this helpful to be able to kind of see all three sides, right? Because we talked about each side each day, but I have women tell me all the time when I show them the triangle, they're like, okay, this helps me see the different sides. Okay, but again, and I'm going to stop sharing. You can just look at the big one over here. You can have schedules and you can have even the type of schedule we talk about, right? That where you don't feel the way that we said that most of you are feeling. But if you don't have the scaling systems and the scaling strategies, right? It's again, my tripod here, this thing's on a tripod, would be falling over, right? Or if I just have two of them. That's what happened the other day. I was trying to set it up and one of them kept like slipping down. Guess what? The whole thing was on the ground and so was I. Like we have to have all three things here, right? This is what's going to produce the R.O.T.I, right? Those number of hours and the fruit that's coming from it, and not just the tangible fruit, also the impact fruit, all here, right? So as we are finishing up today, and before we go into Q&A, and I don't have a hard stop today, so I am willing to stay here with anyone who's live and, and really help talk through these three different things and how they can help you and all of that. Thank you for my hair comment there. You're a curly girl too, I think sometimes. So yeah, sometimes by the end of the week, I'm like, enough of the curls. It's going up. All right. So before we get into Q&A, I want to share an opportunity for those who are ready to fully implement what we've been talking about this week. And you know that having support and having other like-minded business owners around you is the way that you're going to stay on the path. And I just want to say this is not going to be for everyone, but it will be for the woman who's not only thinking like an abundant CEO, you're ready to do like an abundant CEO. Okay. This CEO wants a growing engaged list, right? A ready audience that's turning into clients without chasing them or begging them or stressing or wasting. Who does posting and praying on social, right? Like, what if you just like could hear the ping of things coming into your phone while you're making dinner instead of you being on social trying to put one more post out, hoping somebody's going to see it? This is the CEO who wants consistent client sign-ons, right? She's consistently having new people that are like, how do I work with you, right? And where do I pay? And what I need what you have, right? Like, and to where she knows exactly where the next client's coming in and doesn't feel like it's feast or famine. Who wants that? Right? This is for the CEO who wants that like reliable, predictable income, right? It's consistent. It's coming in month after month. So she's not sweating the credit card statement, right? Staring at the bank app, wondering if that payment's going to clear before her mortgage auto draft hits, right? Or who says, I don't know if I can pay for that ticket to go see my grandson or whatever. Like, it's like, yes, it's right there. Like, let's do this. This is for the CEO that wants systems that work, right? Whether it's like your marketing or your onboarding or your delivery, so you can stop overthinking and you're not holding it all in your head. Hello, decision fatigue and reinventing the wheel every week, right? Like, what if you could onboard that new client in minutes, not hours, without having to hunt down that Google Doc that you swore you would organize someday, right? Or better yet, like hand that off to your team so you can have the energy and bandwidth to go lead the women's ministry event, right? This is for that CEO who wants to have the stress-free launches, who when she gets the phone call minutes before she goes live, she's not stressed because she already knew exactly what to do, when to do it, and how to get it done efficiently, such that she's ready ahead of schedule. And you're not running on fumes. And you're not sipping coffee on, chugging at 2 a.m. while you're trying to duct tape things together, right? And this is for that CEO who wants the freedom to scale without burnout, right? I don't believe, and we started this whole week at the back of the beginning, in order to get more results, you do not have to put in more time, right? Like you should be able to expand your results and your impact, right? By being a good steward of your time with these things and still have time, energy, margin, and more life beyond your laptop, right? Go take the after dinner walk with your husband and your dogs, or book a weekend getaway, or even like take a middle of the afternoon nap, right? Without your business falling apart. So, if that is the kind of abundant CEO that you are ready to be, whether you're on live or whether you're watching a replay, I'll tell you what to do in a minute. If you're on live, drop ready in the chat. If you're listening on replay, you can just message me wherever we're connected or email ready to lissa@redeemhertime.com. Okay, because I want to share with you about the time scaling team intensive that I've been talking about this week. Okay, so this is a 6-week focus to build out all three legs for you and your team. Okay, now hold on. If you don't have a team, I don't want you checking out because remember, you are your first team member. Okay, so it starts with you in the first 3 weeks, not 3 months, not sometime and then when I get around to it. In the first 3 weeks, we are going to get your time scaling schedules, your time scaling systems, and your time scaling strategies in place. You're going to have an ideal week plan. You're going to have a CEO dashboard that's up, and you're going to have a growth map, right? No more saying I have to get back to that because we are going to do it together. Okay. Who's working too many hours? We're going to cut your time back. Who is saying, you know what? I would love to increase my revenue, especially before Christmas. Hello, right? Yeah, we're going to make a plan. Who's ready to not always be thinking and on in their head with their business? Like, let's create some space in your life. Okay. So we start with you first. And again, I don't want this something that you feel like I just have to get back to. And we're going to like build the foundation, like the framework. And then, yes, we will keep coming back to add to that as we grow. But we got to get something going, girl. Okay. All right. In the second 3 weeks, now we're going to walk through that team piece of things. And yes, even if you are still a team of one, or you don't have any idea when you would bring on a team, an abundant CEO is always thinking ahead, right? So we're going to talk about why should you hire? When should you hire? How would you hire when you're ready? And then what do you even hand off, right? And how do you do that? And how do you manage without being a micromanager? And all the things, right, that come with that. So that way, when you're ready, you will already have the steps to build your team, to onboard your team, and to lead your team. And I guarantee when you start thinking like a scaling CEO, this will happen less. It will happen sooner actually than you think. And it won't cost you as much as you think. And it will actually multiply your time and drive revenue, right? You're not going to be like those busyness owners I told you they have a team, but it's costing them time and money, right? Who would like to feel like you just made your first hire because you streamlined your time, right? Because you've got these things up and running in place. And then who would like to not be the only person doing the work in the next 12 months or the next 6 months or even by the end of the year, right? So in 6 weeks, this is what we're doing because we don't have time to waste time. I don't know about you, but I couldn't afford to just keep letting time pass by, right? And then even better is that you get me as your coach for an entire 12 months, right? And so we've got opportunities to get into the nitty gritty, to build layers down, to make sure that this thing is growing to meet your needs now and it's growing with you, right? We have weekly live coaching calls. We've got a private community. We have a self-paced curriculum. But I'm not going to let you just sit off in the sidelines. Like I said, we're going to get to work in those first 6 weeks. So you've got the frameworks built, and then we can keep growing from there. Okay, so here's what I'm doing because I haven't talked to anybody outside of CEO Time Warp about this. You guys are the first people hearing about this, okay? So this opportunity is good through Tuesday, September 2nd. Like this is not something especially the team part and this like let's get this thing done in 3 weeks part. I've never offered that before, right? So that is just like an extra bonus that's on top of everything. So if you are here live or you're listening to a replay and you're like, Lisa, I'm in. I don't know all the details, but like I want to know, just drop ready, right? I'm ready to be that kind of CEO. I'm ready to finally get my time under control. I'm ready to actually be producing fruit and be moving a lot closer to this and beyond this than I have been. Then drop ready and I will be in touch to answer your questions and share the next steps. Okay. Now, before I take some questions, I've been talking to a lot of you this week. And I talk to women all the time. And you guys know, I've been telling you this week, I get really curious about what's going through women's heads, right? And so here's what I want you to know. Just in case this is you, this is for the woman who says, Lisa, I don't have time. And in love, I just look back at you and say, that's exactly why you're here. Let's get going, right? Who's ready to get a handle on your time? Or better yet, scale to impact your time, right? Drop ready in the chat. This is for the woman who says, Lisa, and I actually have had three of these conversations this week. I'm considering hiring someone or starting this program to help me with fill in the blank. Messaging, social, business strategy, right? Here's what I say. Perfect. You are the kind of person who understands that when you invest in yourself, in your business, that is how you're going to help grow. But here's the thing. We talked about what happens yesterday with so much of that stuff. It sits in our inbox or hangs in our closet, right? And doesn't really change anything. Business coaches are bringing me into their program because they can teach the concepts. But if you don't, as their client, have these schedules, systems, and strategies to plug them into, you will not see sustainable and scaling results. So who is ready to get the most out of any investment you'll ever make in your business? You have to have this first. Hello. Right? And I'm even working with a few people. So that would be like if you're considering hiring somebody else, I would just say, hey, let's get this first. Guess what? We could do this in, 3 weeks is going to be your part, right? And then you can start layering on their stuff and you're actually going to like have a framework that's going to be able to hold it. But some people have already invested, and I get that. I'm actually working with a couple of women right now who've invested in another program, but they're like, Lisa, I'm not following through on this and I'm running out of access time to this and I'm going to lose my money here pretty soon. And so this is good stewardship, right? Where we're going, okay, like first of all, if you didn't invest in it yet, good, let's get this in place first, then go invest in that. But if you already did, it's okay. Like we do this work and then you're going to get everything out of that, right? You're going to be the story that the coach is sharing because she's going to be like, wow, teach this to a lot of people, but you're like actually the person who's doing it, right? And you're gonna be like, yeah, this is why, right? So who's ready to no longer have a program or product graveyard, right? Say ready, right, in the chat. This is for the woman who says, Lisa, I'm good. I already have schedule systems and strategies. And again, in love, I would just say, do you really? Right? Like if your schedule is a bunch of appointments and to-do lists, or you still feel behind or pulled off task or stressed, you don't have a scaling schedule, right? If your system is still a lot of to-do lists or workflows, or your team is constantly needing you, or you're still always looking for things, you don't have a scaling system. Or if like that goal feels really far off or you're no closer to it, you're not almost there or already there by this point in the year, like it's just a bunch of tasks and deadlines that still just keep getting kicked down the road, like you don't have a scaling strategy, right? And if you're not actually already seeing the results, which I talk to so many of you, you're like, there's a big gap, Lisa. Okay, right? Then you don't really have scheduled systems and strategies, at least not ones that are working, right? We're here to get ones that actually work. Okay. The product graveyard. Yes, that happens in a lot of areas, whether it's digital products or physical products or our closets, right? Yeah. This is also for the woman who says, Lisa, you know what? I'm just going to wait till, right? When I'm going to wait till I finish this other thing. I'm going to wait till after the holidays. I'm going to wait till, right? Okay. Okay. Are you really going to be any closer if you kick the can down the road and let more time go by? Chances are nothing's going to change and you're going to feel further away. Right? So, like, if you're ready to actually see this happen, like, okay. And then the last woman I was thinking of this morning is that woman who says, Lisa, I've invested before, but it did hang in the closet. It did sit in my inbox. And I get it because it's easy to not trust yourself when you haven't followed through before, right? When you weren't committed and you weren't invested. But here's the thing, the reason you weren't is because you didn't have all three of these and the right kind in place, right, to actually do something with it, right? So, like, what if this could help you start trusting yourself again so that you know I'm not just saying things, I'm like actually doing them. So, if you are any of those women, that I talked about today, drop ready down in the chat. I will reach out to you afterwards. Or if you're listening to the replay somewhere, message me, email me, whatever, Lisa@redeemhertime.com. Just say, hey, I'm ready. Like, I want to know what this is about, right? Today is Friday. It's almost September, right? September 2nd is Tuesday. So give you some time. Think about it, pray about it. Let's talk about it and see what it is that you need to do. All right. Whew, girl, I've had a lot of fun hanging out with you guys the past 4 days. Those of you I could see and those of you who I can't. I hope that your faith has grown this week. I hope that your belief has grown this week. I hope that you're seeing I do have time, right? And I'm starting to feel a little bit different about my time, right? It's not perfect. It's okay. Progressing, right? Like imagine we hung out what 4 hours together this week. Like what could your business look like a year from now? Right? If we get to spend 12 months together, like we're going to become business besties, right? And we're going to really see like what God can do when we partner with him and we partner together and make this thing happen. And so I'm just praying. Like, and I shared that with my mom this morning. I was like, hey, I'm praying that those people who really feel called to grow the thing that God has called them to and know that, yeah, this is the key. This is what unlocks it all, that, yeah, that they're going to raise their hand and we're going to be able to work together. So I don't know who you are, but that's where I leave it in the Lord's hands, right? And just know that I've done my part. I'm here. And yeah, I'm here to serve you guys. So let's do this. For those of you who are on live, um, do you have a question? Whether it's something, we talked in general about, or whether it's something specific under one of these, or whether, like, I mean, we can't get into the weeds of everything, obviously. But how can I serve you? I want you walking away, not feeling like I feel like am less than when I came. I want you walking away feeling filled up and feel like, okay, I have access to the tools that are actually going to make the difference. But sometimes there are still questions, or maybe it's just something that you're like, hey, this is just what I needed to hear. Or, can you tell me more about this? So anyway, I'll be quiet and just kind of wait and see if anybody has something. Using those graveyard courses as next year's New Year's resolution. I love it. I love it. Right. And I know, normally I would say, why next year? But I do know because you told me yesterday what your 12-week plan is. And so, yes, I want you focusing on doing your 12-week plan up until that time and then that. Right. So, what if you had these in place so you actually got the investment out of those things, even if they were free? Right. But here's the thing. Usually you're only going to get to a certain level with free stuff, but it's still helpful. Okay, you've mentioned the time anchor method several times, but didn't go over what it is during this program, unless I missed it. Can you give a very brief overview? Yes, I'm happy to. Okay, so the time anchor method, we talked about this a little bit on day one. But you're right, we didn't have time in any of these days to go like super deep into things. But let me kind of give you the overview. Okay, so a boat that is anchored, right, has this like rope or line of some sort that attaches it to a weight that keeps it in a certain area. Okay. Now, the reason for that is because they don't want the boat floating off to sea. Hello, right? Like that boat has value, right? And so whoever owns it wants to make sure that that boat is there when they need it, right? But the other thing about that is that like that line is not so tight or taut because it's got to be able to like flow with the wind and the waves, right? Like the wind and the waves are going to come, and if it's so tight it's just going to like hit it up against the dock, or it's going to like snap the line and then it's gone, right? And so here's the problem with time blocks. They're too tight. They're too packed. They're too whatever. There's no margin, there's no space, I can't breathe, I can't think, I'm just literally one task to the next, whatever. So time anchor zones is the way that I teach that you look at your day in 5 different time zones. Okay. So two of them are refills. I believe you should start your day and end your day with filling up body, mind, spirit. And yes, you probably have some little refills during the day, but two main ones. Okay. We shouldn't be getting up and being on our phones, starting to work right away. And we shouldn't be working on stuff up until the minute we go to bed, whether it's in our business or our home. Then in between are the pour outs. And so these are those time zones where, like, okay, this is time to pour into my family and my household, right? The things, in my environment around me. Then we also have one where it's about like our work, the work that we do, right? And so what we need to do instead of making these a time block for every box, if you have my planner, and I know Lorian, who's asking this question, has the planner, I didn't put lines on that weekly spread. I put dots because I didn't want you to feel like I've got a box for every hour and I have to fill this with something, right? This is about zones. And so actually the way that I do mine, I don't know if this would be, if you'll even be able to see it or not. Well, here, I'll kind of show you this page. Okay, so I draw in my zones. So I had a specific meeting time with somebody here, right? So that had a time there next to it, right? But like this is my morning refill up here. This is my pour out to my household and family. This is my work zone. This is again my family and household again, and my evening refill. So my brain is thinking about what time in my day is it, not just what time is it, right? And now when I get tempted to get distracted, right? Because how easy it is, you're sitting down in front of your computer, work on something, and all of a sudden, suddenly the laundry feels really important, or suddenly you gotta go get that, I don't know, whatever thing, right? And then we're jumping all over the place, wondering why we didn't actually get our work done, right? Or, we're out there doing all the things and never getting into our office, right? Like, so I go, okay, I don't have to worry about that right now. I've got that sweater I have to return because, I told you guys a story the other day of what happened with my sweater. But right now is not the time for me to do that. I've got that time of my day where that's going to live. So the time anchor zones are kind of like it gives you space to like move and breathe, so it's got, some parameters, but not so much that you're feeling like. So I don't know if that was helpful, if that was too much, but hopefully that kind of gave a little bit more picture of the time anchor zones versus time blocking. I'm going to categorize and figure out what I need to do first, second, third. Under which category? I mean, are you talking schedules, systems, or strategies?
That was in a dialogue with
Hmm.
Lorianne about the graveyard
The
courses,
graveyard
like all the stuff
courses.
I have sitting around that I'm like, yeah, trying to figure out what's actually going to be useful in which stage we're in, especially with us
Got it.
changing courses.
Sure.
Um, yeah, because I'm like, okay, because so much of what we have is for the online business portion. But then since we're also starting to take steps towards the in-person portion, yeah, it's one of those like I can't even ask a specific question at this point because I'm sitting here thinking through all the things that we need to do on both sides and then what needs to go where
Hmm.
because we need the income coming in somewhere. Because right now Jim's job is it's taking care of us fine, but it's not.
Great questions. And she had to mute. She's got a bunch of kids around and stuff like that, which is fine. So here's one thing to anyone who has a product graveyard, permission to not go back and resurrect the dead. Like, if you've made it this long without getting in there, do you really need it? I mean, it's kind of one of those things that they say, like, if you have a hard time purging in your house and you don't just want to get rid of it, like put it in a box and put a date like 6 months from then on it. And if you haven't actually gone in that box to get that thing, not I'm going to open the box to see what's in here and oh yeah, now I think I need this. No, if you haven't actually actively thought about and then gone to get that thing, you probably don't need it. So kind of and again, even if you spent money on it, ladies, it is still going to have a time tax if you go in out of obligation to do that thing. So yes, I mean, here's where you're going to go like, okay, here's where you have to know, right? Where am I right now? And then do any of these tools directly speak into what I'm focusing on now? If not, I would let them wait. And maybe you make an inventory, so you've got something somewhere. So you have a like, okay, when I get to this, I'm going to need to go do this. Or if I ever get to this thing,
Yeah.
go grab this.
And I think that's where I am is it's like I have lots of little things here and there, both free and paid, and trying to figure out what the best resources are for right now. Because there are some things like I can remember buying and I'm like, I really want to get back to that. And other things I'm like, yeah, it's probably just gonna go. But then I need like because it's also like cleaning out my Bookmarks. That's something else that I'm just like realizing I'll go in looking for something that I'm certain I bookmarked and I can't find it where I think I should be. And then there's all this other stuff that I'm like, why do I have this bookmarked?
Yeah, yeah, right? Yeah, there's physical clutter and then there's digital clutter. Welcome to our digital age, right? And both of them just cost just as much time. I think sometimes the digital does more because it's easier to collect things and we don't notice it and all of that. So here's where you go. Number one, don't I mean, say for example, it was your house, right? And you're like, listen, my house is a mess. I've been a pack rat, like all, and you probably went through this when you were moving, right? Like, so you don't try to tackle the whole, say, I'm putting life on hold until my entire house is cleaned out. Guess what? You're going to be either there forever or it's never going to be done, right? So first thing you do is you get the schedule systems and strategies in place to keep your business moving where you are, right? So things are going forward. And then you can set aside some time to go into one room, one box, one whatever, one place, and be like, I'm setting a timer for this much time. I'm not doing anything else until this timer goes off, and I'm going to see where I get. And then when the timer goes off, you decide, am I resetting another timer or am I moving on? And when am I coming back to this if I have more that I need to do? So, yeah, only if I don't have any children in my house. Yes. Yeah, when you have the more people you have, the more stuff tends to accumulate. But even still, business owners, hello, we accumulate a lot of stuff on our digital devices. So we can't blame most other people around us for that, right? Yeah, yeah. But I think way too many people spend all their time getting ready to get ready, right? Getting organized, and then aren't really actually doing anything to move the needle. And, so not that you ignore it, but yeah, think about what's going to have the best roadie right now. All right, I'm just checking the chat to see if there's anything over here that I missed. Okay. All right. Any other questions or thoughts or things that you need while you're here? Those of you who are on here live? If you're listening to the replay, you can access me inside the Redeem Her Time community. The link should be down below where you're seeing this. You can email me at lissa@redeemhertime.com. If we're connected on social somewhere, you have my phone number, like reach out. I don't want you to feel like you're alone. And I'm excited for, yeah, those women who are ready to say, you know what, we're stepping into September. Like, all right, I'm doing this. No more talking about it. Like, let's make this happen. So all right. Well, thanks you guys for hanging out with me today and this week. It's really been a joy, and I'm just very expectant about the fruit that God is producing from the time that we've had together. So make sure you share it. All right. All right. Talk to you soon.